and some collaborative efforts amongst you and your team just to get things ready for the coming school year. I know working together makes things a lot easier. So if there's ever, hopefully this presentation is a part of that planning for next year. And I'm going to walk you through a little bit of our journey. But the first thing I wanted to do, for those of you that are willing to open up your mics and comment, the first thing I was going to ask is if you could give me one word that would describe what you believe your school or one of the schools in your district, if you're a district leader, if you're just what your district is all about. But in one word, if you could just summarize, what is it that your school or your school community is all about? I would love to hear from you. So if you could open up your mic and share that, I'm going to just take a note on a couple of these. I can pick on Corey. It says he's connecting to audio. But John, Molly, Melissa, or Vicky, any of you guys want to share a word?
Unity.
Say that again, Molly.
Unity.
Unity.
Community?
Unity, I think I heard.
Oh, unity. Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly. And if the others don't want to share, if you have a word that you're thinking of, my question is always to folks that I talk to about this topic is, well, do your students know that word? Do they know that that's a value in your district? And if they don't, how is it that you can communicate that value to them? So if unity is your value or one of them, or if that's really what your culture is all about, how do you project that out to your student body? And then furthermore, which I'll talk about today, into your community and the surrounding areas. And that's really what it means to be a value-centered school is, making those values and what you believe to be the core of your culture truly emblematic of your school, putting that out there to your community and everybody else so that your students know this is what it means to be a Cary-Grove Trojan or a Hornet or you name it. And so that's what I'm hoping to share today. And if at any point in time you want to interject with a question or a comment, please do. My style is I'm not used to just speaking for 40 straight minutes, but I am going to try and share as much as I can today to help you in this process of becoming a value-centered school community. So I'll cut to the chase. When I got to be a school leader here at Cary-Grove High School, I walked into a really healthy culture where the slogan, "We Be CG," had become popularized. And so as we go through this presentation, you'll see that slogan a lot, "We Be CG." This is our school student body here. And that slogan was really used in many different ways. Students would use it every once in a while, saying, "We Be CG" as a sense of pride. We'd see it on Twitter as a hashtag, "We Be CG," when they were accomplishing something. Students, staff, etc., had accomplished something. It was a sense of pride. It was attached to all of these photos that I had found on Twitter over the course of time. And so when you look at these and you think about that slogan of "We Be CG," it's catchy and it's fun, but there was really nothing behind it. And so the question became, well, what does it actually mean to be CG? And so I would ask you all to think about that too. What does it actually mean to be a Trojan or to be a Hornet or to be an Eagle or a Sequoit or something like that? And so that's what we started. That's exactly where we started is what does that actually mean to be CG? And so in my first year, we established a goal of we want to create these core values and decide upon what our core values are as a building. We wanted to involve as many folks as we could. And so the start of this process and the way I'd encourage you all to start is to develop some committees. We used our staff. We used multiple groups of students during lunch hours. So we served them pizza and we brought them into a space and we talked with them about different questions, which I'll share with you in a second. I also had a parent advisory committee that contributed largely to this effort. We, as part of those parents, I also made sure that those parents were community leaders. So we had one that's the head of our park district, another that was involved in the Chamber of Commerce, and a third one that was a previous teacher and had gone off into business and runs a dental office in town. And so we were able to gather different opinions from different perspectives. And then finally, we brought back about 20 alumni and we asked them the same set of questions, which I'll share with you in a moment. So what we did here was we really decided upon all these different groups, what are our core values at Cary-Grove High School? And so who are we and who are our students, essentially, is what we were looking to define. And so I'll take you to this page here. And these are the prompts, and these are my notes, my live notes from one of those sessions. But really it starts as, what are our values as a school? What are our strengths as a staff? And then what are our students' strengths? So really starting on that positive side. But then furthermore, we wanted these values to really determine the development we wanted to see in our students before they went off after high school. What I mean by that is, we didn't just want these values to be things that were meaningful to us. We also wanted these to be things that were meaningful in the workplace and in the world around us outside of the bubble of Cary-Grove. So that's why it was important to get business input as well. So I want you to think about it as a way of combining these, what we call 21st century skills, and we've adapted to calling them essential life skills, with our values as a school. And so you're not just developing these things in kids, you're also developing them with a purpose. This is to prepare you to be life ready. And yes, academics play a role in that, but we care more about developing honorable students than honor students, essentially. And so that was kind of our slogan, and it was based on an old quote of, we're developing honorable kids, not just honors kids. And so those prompts are shared with you there as well. I'm sorry, I lose my mouse every once in a while, so I gotta bring it back here. So that was our first meeting, and in those first meetings, it was really about defining who we are and what we want to see out of our students. This conference being about empathy is important because that was one of the things that was named as lacking in our students, was a sense of empathy. And that was actually during the time of a very controversial presidential election. And so it was really at the forefront of the minds of our staff and our parents that our students are really lacking this ability to empathize with others and share thoughts while still being sensitive to those around them. And it was the nature of our society at that time. And so empathy essentially is built into our 6th pillar of citizenship. So during our second and third meetings, this is what we created, is the title. The pillars were Trojans, and so we did pillars because we felt that was, somewhat emblematic of a Trojan, and our building. And so then it was, okay, what is it about the BCG pillars? Well, it's what it takes to be successful. So what we say is the first 5 pillars really culminate into becoming a great citizen. And that's the ultimate goal, is to create students that are great citizens, that are able to work together. And this is all empathy, value others, trust others, serve others, and practice acceptance. And the question becomes around a lot of these is, well, how do you teach them? And we'll get to that in a moment here too, because that's the crux of my presentation that I want to make sure I convey to you all is, these aren't just things we hang on the walls. These are things that are going to become a part of our everyday curriculum. And so you can see here under each of our core values of self-advocacy through citizenship, we've also created some descriptors, if you will, or indicators of what those things are. And I think that's an important point, is we can't just project words on a wall and tell kids this is what we value. We have to show them what those things actually look like in their day-to-day activities. And so that's why we created these descriptors, because and actually what we've started to do as of last year, we have all of our freshman English class teachers, the pillars are their first or second day of class, because you'd be surprised how many kids have no idea what the word integrity actually means and what self-advocacy means, for example. And so we actually have our English teachers going through and defining what these are to students, so they have a clear understanding of the actual the dialogue that we're using. So I would encourage you to think about that too. And in some ways, maybe we could have made these more simple. Maybe we could have only had 3 values, so it's easier to remember, because sometimes I do forget the 6, to be honest with you. But this is just what we had created during those second and third meetings, and what has become really pivotal in this whole movement is this image that you see in front of you. So the final meetings really focused on developing a plan to move forward. And I've linked that here, and you all have access to this as well. But these are our prompts for those last meetings, is where do we go from here? And so we decided on a number of different things, which I'll show you in my slide deck. But it becomes putting it on display and really developing awareness. And so the model that we've used always in my 3.5 years here for change is, year 1 is creation and awareness. Year 2 is implementation. And then year 3 and beyond is making whatever that change is part of your culture. So awareness, implementation, and culture. And I think that's from a book that I've read at some point. So it's not my idea. It is definitely stolen from someone else. But this gives you an idea as you scroll through these, what are some concerns that you have? And opening day, what does that look like? And so this core committee of people designed how we were going to move forward. And that was critical too. This wasn't an admin decision and top down. This was really built through these multiple committees of various stakeholders, which was really, really important, especially to our staff. So that was year one. That was my first year of 3 as a building principal. And we established those things. We created these emblems. We created all the different strategies we wanted to take moving forward. And in year 2, 18, 19 is really when we started to execute and implement. And so I'm going to show you how we did that. We took our cum laude program, which had been around for a while, and we adapted it. We changed it and tweaked it to try and mirror more of the values that we had that were in our BCG values. And actually this year, because academics and scholarship and things like that are adapting and changing, we're actually going to be switching more of this over to actually be closer related to our pillars. Growth, for example, was an ACT measurement. And so we're trying to make it an SAT measurement, but without our current seniors having taken the SAT, we may be adapting the cum laude program and actually taking advantage of that change and making it more about our pillars. But these were the images that were projected throughout our building, throughout our website, on social media. I wanted to show you too, this is just a one-pager I linked, and it really actually shows the BCG pillars as part of maybe a PBIS approach. And so if your school is a PBIS school, this is a one-pager that I had created for a colleague of mine that talks about how this becomes part of a positive behavior intervention by creating a social culture and expectation for all students. It's a tier 1 thing. And so I wanted to link that there for you all in case that was something you were interested in seeing. That is by clicking simply on that image. So what did we do? Well, we wanted to measure this. So we surveyed all of our students and trying to figure out exactly where we were at as a building. So this took place in the spring of 17 and 18, and this became our baseline data. And so you won't see our senior class in here. This was simply freshmen through juniors that we were going to have the next year. We had them measure, these are 4 of the prompts. We did about 10 or 15 or so of the prompts around the pillars. And students were really just giving us a glimpse as to how honest in terms of integrity, how honest are they, and how honest do they feel their classmates are. And then, when you think about just the level of responsibility and things like that, students were able to measure that or provide us a measurement of that as well. And this became our baseline data. What you see here is positive, I think, but what we saw as a staff is a lot of opportunity, especially in the neutral zone, which is the orange color. So when you look at like the students at Cary-Grove are honest and trustworthy, there's 40% of kids said neutral. And we're thinking to ourselves, well, if they're neutral, then what does it take to help them understand that they can trust each other? Or what can we do to help those students find that an adult that they can trust even, but further than that, their peers? So having some baseline data is a really great idea. It was something that came from my colleague. And so I was gonna show you briefly that survey. You can see that this was the most recent one we took of all of our students this most past year. But you can see the pillars were a part of our questions here. I seek support and assistance or ask questions, so self-advocacy. I accept challenges, learn from failure, so perseverance, and on and on. And so that gets to honest and trustworthy. I consistently and actively participate. We're talking about engagement. So we were able to create metrics around each of these and create some way of measuring our progress in what we were doing. We created a goal and we set steps to achieve that goal. And you'll see at the top here, the year 1 is awareness and implementation. Year 2, full implementation, and year 3 and beyond is culture. And so these were the steps we took. We separated these into our branding category. What does it visually look like? Our staff. So what are their steps that they need to take? And then finally, our students, what is it that we want them to do? And really what it became was we want them to take more and more ownership over this and control of this. If they're the ones that we want to become these things, then we want them to also have ownership over it. And I think that's what we've really started to see just in this past year. I linked here. So what we ended up doing for the first year was each month we focused on a different pillar. And I linked in here just the announcements I would make each month. I apologize, my mouse, I keep losing, but you'll see I would announce to the kids, this is the start of our campaign. This pillar for this month is self-advocacy. And then I would tell them in my announcements what actions would mean that they're advocating for themselves. What actions demonstrated responsibility or engagement. And so each month we would focus on one of those pillars. And then towards the end of second semester, we started changing things up a little bit. But I provided you my announcements here if that was something that would be helpful. So you can take those and use them if you ever felt it necessary. We also branded a lot. So this is our entire staff for orientation. We have freshmen walk through a tunnel of staff. And actually on graduation day as seniors, they then walk back through the tunnel of staff to enter graduation. Is somewhat symbolic for us. But we got all of our staff BCG t-shirts, and on the back it listed the pillars. We got cooking aprons for everyone. You can see the backs of those t-shirts have the pillars on them. And so we wanted this to be visual and seen and demonstrated throughout the school. Beyond that, we created a system of awarding students. And so, for example, if month one was responsibility, and you as a staff member saw a kid demonstrate responsibility, even at the smallest level, you handed them this Way to BCG paper certificate that I have a picture of here. On the back of it, you wrote down the kid's name, your name as a teacher, and then you circled the pillar that they demonstrated. That kid comes to the front office, he hands in that slip of paper and he gets a full-size candy bar. And then he also is thrown into a raffle and they can win a BCG t-shirt or a BCG laptop sticker, which you see there on the left. And once you take those pictures of these kids with the t-shirts, they go out on social media, you tag maybe their parents on Facebook, things like that. And all of a sudden it becomes kind of a cool thing and a big thing throughout the school. So laptop stickers, you can get 200 of them for very cheap. I have a stack over on my desk right now of about 500. We gave every one of our staff members a laptop sticker along with their t-shirt. So you just see it everywhere you go. And then what I do with the laptop stickers when we do the drawing is I go into that student's class and I award it to them in front of their classmates. And I explain to them why that student has received that laptop sticker and what they did that was so great. And so this was the system that we initially had created throughout the building to allow our staff members to award students for their behavior in a positive way. We also had, and many of you have, breakfast of champions or a way to award students in the morning before school, which is what you see on the left. We had that in the building before I came here, but what we did was we adapted it to focus on the pillars. And so instead of it being a kid that was most improved or a kid that was just stellar academically, it became a student that demonstrated great engagement or a student that was really a great citizen for some project that they had done that helped their community. And so we created ways to connect the pillars to their character and their achievement of character so that it was all linked together. On the right, we have our top 25 most improved breakfast. Again, these are students that aren't typically recognized. They're students that had grown in their GPA. But what we did was instead of making it about GPA, we switched it and made it more about kids that were demonstrating the pillars. And again, you're getting a wide range of kids and types of kids, which is even better to me. And so we adapted each of what we already had going as celebrations into something that was more about our core values.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, please do.
So at our school, we've, the last few years, as part of the PBIS system, we have, similar to what you're describing, something called Eagle tickets. Our mascot is the Eagles. And so we use Eagles as an acronym where each of those letters represents a piece of character within the students. And so I remember last year or 2 years ago, we had brought up the idea similar to what you're describing in terms of like identifying highlighting one particular character trait each month or each quarter or whatever it might look like. And I just remember a couple teachers pushing back just in terms of not wanting students to kind of artificially demonstrate that character or insincerely. I was just curious if that conversation came up or if you really ran into that issue, because we ended up not going with that idea. And I'm not sure if that was a genuine concern we should have actually had or not.
That's a great question. And I actually have two instances where staff pushed back. So thank you for that. And thanks for interjecting. So in regards to your thought, that did happen where, teachers felt like students were just going to be doing these things to get a candy bar or be rewarded. One thing I would say is we're talking about high school kids. And for high school kids, it's not necessarily cool to brown nose and like fake things to get candy. It was really more about like catching the student in an act of kindness, if you will. We had, even though that was a concern, we never saw that actually happen. Where a student was like artificially doing, more so saw it as teachers, like a kid would pick up a piece of trash that happened to be on the floor and put it in the garbage can, and the teacher would be like, come with me for a second. I just love that you do that, because that tells me that you're really conscious of your school and you're proud of your school. And they would give them a ticket and they come get a candy bar. At the end of the day, what I told our staff is, if a kid's really faking it and he wants a candy bar, so be it. They cost us 50 cents a piece at
Right.
at Walmart. It's not a big deal, but it really never happened. The bigger pushback from our staff actually was, why would I reward a kid for doing something I already expect them to do? These are kids should be doing this anyway. Why would I reward them for that? And what I said to them was, I actually announced this at an all staff breakfast that we had. I said, look, if you are someone that is feeling negative about this, I encourage you to come down to our office and sit by my office for 2 hours one day and see a kid come in with a slip in his hand and how excited he gets to be rewarded for something that he probably does do every day. But you would be amazed at the response from our staff. Just me saying that, they never took me up on my offer, but I said to them, we need to make this a priority. I apologize, my phone is going off. We need to make this a priority because kids love it and it means a lot to them. And again, we never saw, the staff never felt like that was something that was happening, was we're just rewarding kids for things that we expect them to do. It's, no, we're showing them that we appreciate them doing the things we expect them to do, because not everybody does it. So those were the two pieces of pushback that we heard a lot about.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
Yeah, so I would encourage you to move on, full steam ahead, go for it. And again, if that's a problem, then you address it when it actually becomes a problem. I wouldn't stop doing something or prevent yourself from doing something great when it isn't a problem yet. That's something that frustrates me all the time.
Makes sense.
Great question. Thanks, Melissa. And if anybody else has questions, just jump in. We also branded outside the building. I did get phone calls from parents that this was not grammatically correct. And I said, well, I apologize, but it's who we are and it's what we're about. And there's more meaning behind this than just the slogan. But We Be CG is what we're about. This is on our soccer field. If you don't at your school have these insert cups for fences and stuff, I encourage you to look into it. It's super cheap, easy way to brand yourself across the school grounds. Everybody's got fences, so let's make them look pretty. Moving into this past school year, 1920, which is only our second year of full implementation, really what became a part of this initiative was getting it out to more than just our school. And so that's where we're gonna move on from here. So it really becomes just about this initiative, but trying to expand it, kind of think about it on steroids, if you will, just making it bigger and better and more present. So we launched more of a campaign on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And I actually began letting students take over those things. So I would give students ownership over each of those accounts, one student per, and they still had to review their postings with me, but their goal was to catch their peers doing things that showed our pillars. And so they would take pictures or video and they would come and show me. And in some cases they would catch the kid doing it and they'd be like, can I record you doing that again? So it did become somewhat artificial from time to time. But it was a really cool way. We first started having our National Honor Society kids take over. Then we moved into our Spark Club, which is kind of like an acceptance group. And then I went through each of our different activities and just said, hey, do you guys have 3 kids in your group that would like to take over for a week, a month? And we would go from there. But putting kids in charge. We created a Trojan Spotlight. I linked it there. And essentially what I would do is I would sit down with 2 students interview them about an accomplishment. This clip there is of our two dance captains that had gone down and competed at state. And we make it a We Be CG and what does it mean to be a Trojan kind of thing and just celebrate them, but put it out on YouTube. I've only done maybe 5 or 6 of those, and they usually get 300 to 400 views from mainly parents on Facebook. But it's just a great way to continue to get that out there, that message out there. Talked about putting students in charge. This infographic that you see here, where the Trojan loves Cary-Grove, I actually stole this from walking through Target. They have a Target Cares campaign, and I looked at it on the wall, and I thought this would be so cool to have in our school as a way to show our citizenship. So what we did is I had one of our art students create this infographic, and it's in probably about a 4 by 8 foot banner when you immediately walk in our front entrance. So every community member that walks in our school sees this, and right above it, it says We Be CG, and then right below it, it has our pillars. So what this shows though is the pillars put into action. And again, I'm going to stress that you have to show kids that the pillars are more than just words, they are actions. And so this shows the actions taken by our students over the course of time and how that impacts our community in being really good citizens. So just an idea of give your kids ownership, put them in charge, and these are the things that they create. That banner cost us about 110 bucks. We didn't put a date on it for a reason, because we're gonna leave it up for 3 or 5 years and then we'll probably redo it. But it just is a great way to put your students and their actions at the forefront of each of your campaigns. The pen that you see on the left is now this past year, students can actually recognize staff members for being CG. So the pen is what a staff member is given along with a thank you note from the student or from me, depending on if the kid feels comfortable. So a kid can come down to our office now and say, Mrs. Meyer is the best teacher. She is incredibly compassionate, and I feel like she's just a great example of engagement, and she's always in, she's always ready to go. And so I will, or the student will, write a note, and we give that staff member a pen. We present it in front of that class. And I think this year we awarded probably over 20 pens to staff members. So students taking the initiative to come down and award their teacher with what it means to be CG. So that was kind of a cool change this past year. This is getting beyond the school. So at the very beginning of the school year, I visited our Chamber of Commerce, which I do from time to time, and our Rotary Club. And I met with them and I handed them their own pillars poster. It was laminated, very nice. I also handed them a stack of those BCG slips that we changed up a little bit so that the area businesses could have them. So what you will now see if you walk around to different businesses in Cary and Fox River Grove is companies have put those pillars on their walls. So I'll give you an example. A sandwich shop down here has our pillar poster on the wall. And if a student is in there and they're wearing Cary-Grove gear, or it's during our lunch hours and you could pretty much assume they're from Cary-Grove, and they do something that shows responsibility, or they're honest about not paying or something like that, a staff member at that place of business can actually award them with a BCG slip. And they take that back to us at the school. Again, they get a candy bar and they get thrown in a raffle. Last year we had about 14, I think, of those where the businesses actually handed them to kids and kids brought them back to the building. I think most of those happened during lunch hours where kids were out at their place, eating whatever they're doing during lunch. And so a really great way to empower your community to become a part of your core values. So I think, I handed out maybe 100 of those posters, and I would say probably 30 to 50 of them are up in businesses. And I've gotten emails from those businesses saying, thank you so much. Can we get more of these? Our library has it up. The Park District Community Building has them up. They're all over the place. So then the question became from parents, well, we want these. So our parents were saying, we want something for our house. So what you see on the bottom right there is a yard sign. And that was designed by another art student to be a small yard sign that can be placed in the lawn of our students. So this year we created 50 of those, and we actually awarded them to kids that were demonstrating 3 or more of the pillars throughout the year. And so they would stick them in their yard, and They're virtually indestructible, so they can last through seasons. They were a little bit more expensive than, you know, your standard piece of swag, but again, they last a long time. And now when you drive through our neighborhoods here in Cary and Fox River Grove, you see those signs. Next year, our plan is to actually offer those up to anyone that wants to purchase one. And then that way people can just buy them, and that brand becomes a bigger part of our community, and we're going to award students with something else. So just making that brand part of who you are and part of everything you hand out. And that means your values are now beyond your building. I say make it part of your swag. Anytime we have community members come in, whether they're doing like mock interviews or something, we will hand them our BCG pen or a coffee mug, things like that. And oftentimes we'll put the pillars on different things. But again, these aren't just words, there are actions behind those. And so we try to create ways for our community to get involved in our initiatives. So where do we go from here? And essentially, this gets to this idea of empathy, because at the end goal is to make our students better citizens. And in order to be the best citizen, you have to possess empathy. So, you know, beyond our freshman teachers talking with students about the actual vocabulary of the pillars, we are moving forward this coming year with all the COVID stuff. It may be something we postpone a little bit because we want to hand more to our teachers, but our goals for this year are to make the pillars more a part of the classroom experience. So what does that mean? Well, what we've landed on here are different activities that happen in the classroom that help more intrinsically build empathy in our students. So last year we trained our entire staff on design thinking, which is essentially studying what an end user would experience, whether it be a product or an experience they had when going to a different place or when they come to our building, things like that, and then designing from the back end forward into, okay, well, how can we create a better experience for that end user? And what that does is it forces students to examine how someone is feeling and thinking in a certain moment in time, and then adapting to improve upon that experience. And so design thinking is, we're asking each of our staff members to implement a design thinking lesson both semesters. And so that's something we're moving forward with. Also, we are encouraging staff to be explicit with the pillars as actual goals and daily targets. So for example, if we want students to demonstrate engagement and it's something that we feel is lacking in the classroom during a classroom discussion, then we say, okay, today or for this week or for this unit, we're going to be focusing on improving our engagement. What does that mean? Well, specifically, we need to engage more in our academic discussions. And so what I need you to do is to be vocal, to share your ideas, and this is how we're going to track that. But that's going to be an actual target on the board in front of the students, and it'll use the language from the pillars. So that's something else that we're working on as well. When it comes to citizenship and learning from others, learning to accept others, you think about cooperative learning. So how do we collaborate in a way that's respectful of others and in a way that is honoring everybody's different opinions and skill sets? So cooperative learning naturally gets towards that idea of empathy and citizenship as well. And so we're going to work within each of our departments to try and figure out ways through our department chairs to fit daily targets in that include the pillars into some of these activities. Role playing and self-reflection also get to that same idea of the end user. What does it look like when a person experiences this activity or this emotion, and have kids role play through that so they get a true experience, and then design what that might look like to improve upon it. So these are the ways that our division leaders and our department chairs are trying to work with staff to implement the pillars at the classroom level. And I apologize for being vague. This hasn't happened yet. So this is something that we're working forward this year and trying to get happening in each of our different areas. Now, this is a challenge for our staff because it's two-part. It's involving the pillars, but it's also SEL. And our staff is not completely fluent in SEL yet. I would say that most of them don't even know that the state has SEL standards and what those are. And so that's why I say that this is just the beginning of what we hope to accomplish in the months to come. So wanted to give you a glimpse into that. But we want our pillars to be more than just something we honor in students. We want it to be something we actually develop in students, which is a major hurdle to cross. And so that's something that we're working forward right now. I'll be cognizant of our time here. The last couple things here is we're studying this generation of students with our staff, because these pillars are not necessarily something that's easy for them to develop and possess and to maintain. So I would encourage you all to look at resources from Tim Elmore. He talks about this generation being epic. They're experiential, they like to participate, they love images and videos, and they're very connected. And I think now more than ever, we're seeing this as a need for them. But on the other side of that, this generation from the same resource is also sleepless. They have anxiety, fear of missing out, fear of better options. I've linked all these resources for you all to look at. This is where we're starting with our staff is if we're going to be implementing the pillars and social emotional learning into our classrooms, we first have to understand the students that we're serving a little bit better. So this is where we're going to start this year. Like I said, it's about awareness first. And so this is how we're linking the pillars with social emotional capacity in our students and trying to develop that. So finally, I just wanted to include a couple things, but this is a statement an English teacher had sent this to me at the end of the year last year, and a student's reflection on the year included that the CG pillars aren't up on the walls just to be on the walls. They're there because they remind us of what we should act like and how we should be like as a person or student or athlete. This means a lot to me. This is a freshman, and I know that this student now fully understands the pillars and also understands how they can be a really good contributing member of our culture and how they can develop those things throughout our school in the future. And so it's developing leadership. It's creating a common language. It's a positive intervention strategy if you want it to be. It's really a lot of different things, but at the end of the day, it's students understanding what we value and why, and then how we can improve upon that as individuals each day. So at the end of the day, what does it mean? What is it creating? Well, here's the data from the most recent survey that we did. And in the red or the green, it shows if we improved in that area or we declined. So is it working? Kind of, if you want to base it on just this data. There is still a sense of, that these are still high numbers. So I'll be clear about that. I still think these are very high numbers. They're all near 75%, except students feeling listened and understood. So you get an idea here. We declined in a couple very minimally, except we also rose in a few in terms of students' positive responses. So we're going to keep track of this data over time. It's not the end all be all, but it just indicates that things are happening and we have room to improve and we always have room to grow. So things are good, but they can always get better. So that concludes the presentation itself. I hope there's things in there that you can use. This goes back to the quote that I mentioned earlier. This was our former superintendent and a quote that he sent out actually in the wake of the Columbine school shooting. We must cease to aspire that our children be honor students and instead forward the expectation that kids become honorable students. And that's really what a value-centered school community is all about. We want to create really good people, not just really good students. And so I hope that this gives you a way to start on that path, or if you're already there, how to advance along that path. So I appreciate everybody's time. And if there's questions either from Kevin or the rest of the group, happy to try and respond to them.
So go ahead and if you want to unmute yourself or chat anything in or just share anything, I guess while we're waiting for that, Neil, I think John mentioned how impactful that quote was and made me think about, are there bumper stickers that say, I'm a proud parent of an honorable student at Cary-Grove rather than an honor student.
I'll write that down.
I think that all of these ideas are, and the things that you've put in place there and the things that Melissa, you shared, they're really fantastic for developing that school culture. I want to put a question out to the group. The elephant in the room is, what if our kids are not back here in the next few weeks? And if we're in a remote environment, are there any things any new ideas? And just, I don't have any, but I just want to throw that out there. Are there any things that we're talking about or thinking about to say, if our kids are not with us to start the school year, what are some things that we can do to help support our culture?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll start just by saying we carried this campaign through the remote learning period in the spring. I was mailing things home to kids, understanding that, yes, I had to touch them to do that, touch the envelope, touch the this, but I was mailing things home to kids. I was Google hanging out with students to thank them. Teachers, I made a Google form where teachers, basically it's the same thing as that slip of paper, but teachers could write a kid in and what they did, and I would take that and Google hang out with the kid and the parents, which is kind of cool. You now have an opportunity, the parents be in the room too. And I would say, I'd give them my spiel and I would tell them what the teacher said and go from there. I did about 20 some of those over last spring. So not the same. However, it still gives an outlet for teachers to honor kids and what they're doing.
Anybody else have any thoughts?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
I think the most thing that I brought away from this was just being intentional with it across the board. And if you're not going to do that, I've seen many things try to be implemented for SEO and different things, but if you're not going to be intentional and you're not going to do it across the board, like you guys are doing, and brand it and put it in everywhere and everything, that's what makes it successful. And then you're not going to have everyone on board all the time, but at the end of the day, you'll get the majority of people going in the right direction, and that's how you organically grow anything in a school. So this is really awesome stuff.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that. And make it about the team, right? I mean, I am not the person that created all this stuff. It's
right.
Thinking about that team, and you get ownership in the hands of your staff and your students, then like you said, it's way more likely that something actually improves and happens.
One thing that we really value as a school and kind of had as part of our school improvement plan a few years ago was just to have a stronger culture of celebration on all levels, and really trying to get away from solely celebrating academic achievement. And so the last couple of years on Thursday mornings, we would have a very brief but school-wide celebration in our gymnasium area, and teachers would submit character celebrations and things like that. And so to try to keep that going during the spring when we went to remote learning, we did the same thing, but it was through an email. So again, I would contact teachers at the beginning of the week. They would send me, it could be celebrations of learning to cool things that kids were doing with the virtual learning, but also character celebrations that came out through it. And we would send that out, and I would compile an email that was, as visually engaging as it could be, with pictures and stuff that the teachers would send in, and we would send that out every Thursday just to try to keep consistent with what we had been doing in the school building. And a lot of the parents especially really appreciated that.
I love that. That's a great idea. Brings everybody together too. One of the things that our sister school did, Crystal Lake Central, so we get one laptop sticker, the same one. What they did is kind of like an Ohio State helmet model, where they created small little stickers for each of their Tiger Pride words. And they give kids those little stickers, and they can like earn all 5 of them or 6 of them. So that's another way to do it too. Just popped in my head. But as far as like gathering people together, like you said, Melissa, that's awesome. And that's something too, that it shows not only are you willing to dedicate time to it, but time where everybody's together, I think is absolutely crucial, and a great way to keep that pride alive and keep people together and that sense of connection around your values. That's awesome. Just a note too, as we start a new school year, one of the things that we're doing this year, whether we're remote or not, is every teacher is going to get a new WeBCG t-shirt. I would encourage you to think about, what are the things that might have become stale, and how can you refresh them or rebrand them? This is something that we're only going into, our 3rd year of it next year. But already, we have new staff members, we have people that have transitioned buildings, we have people that have worn their shirt to have holes in it. And so it's just like, how can we keep this going and it's really about reminding people what is our core, who are we at our core. And so we're going to give teachers a WeBCG t-shirt, a new one, and that's going to be our opening day, whether it's via Zoom or in the auditorium. It's going to be, let's remind ourselves of who we are and what we're about, and let's talk about Kevin's question as a staff. How can we keep these values really at the forefront of what we're doing if we are remote or hybrid or whatever it is? So just reminding people and refreshing what has already been done.
Great. Gosh, the other thing I keep coming back to, Neil, is the way that you've incorporated the larger community and having, you know, the restaurants and businesses and just I would challenge everybody to continue to look outside your walls and find those ways that people can just easily opt into being a part of their school community. I think one of the things we always, at least in my experience as a building level leader, you know, how can we get volunteers or how can we bring our community into our building? And I think you've really created a very easy way for people to become involved, and I really applaud you for that. So that is the conclusion of our time. Neil, really appreciate your sharing and everything you've done. I did chat in a link to our Illinois YouTube channel where we also have another interview that Neil did more along the lines of where we were in the remote learning environment, as well as just the challenges that are facing us as educators today. So check that out. It's well worth a watch, and continue to hashtag AdmentumIL as we move forward, and we'll wrap this up and head into our last session for the day. So thanks everybody for your participation. Thank you, Neil, and have a great rest of your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody. Good luck starting the school year.